months ago, Vladimir Putin launched his brutal invasion of Ukraine. The time that I've spent reading up on this region's history and Putin's place within it has got me thinking about one question. If this war goes in Putin's favour, where will he invade next? In Eastern Europe, wedged between Moldova and Ukraine, lies this small sliver of land known as Transnistria. Not a single other country on the planet recognises Transnistria as its own nation, despite them having their own currency, flag, passport, parliament, and even a football team. Officially, the land is part of Moldova, but it hasn't been administered by them since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Transnistria is able to maintain its independence due to significant military and economic support from Russia. Visiting Transnistria today feels for all the world like stepping into a time machine to the days before the fall of the Soviet Union. The capital, Tiraspol, is dotted with Soviet-era statues, and they remain the only country on Earth to have the hammer and sickle in their flag. So why is it that I think this is where Putin will seek to invade next? Well, to answer this question, we first need to know a little bit about its history. So here we go. Much of the land that makes up modern-day Moldova, excluding Transnistria, was historically known as Bessarabia. Despite Bessarabia being culturally and linguistically Romanian, in 1812 both it and what is now Transnistria was taken from the Ottomans by the Russian Empire. As the Russian Empire morphed into the Soviet Union, Bessarabia declared independence, and with the help of Romania they evicted Russian forces and shortly after merged into Romania. They weren't, however, able to take over all of the region, leaving behind this land to the east of the Dniester River, which predominantly forms modern-day Transnistria. This land was declared as an autonomous region within the USSR, known as the Moldovan Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, or MASSR. From this point on, this region saw a massive influx of Russian speakers and underwent heavy Russification. The Soviet Union long desired to retake Bessarabia due to its proximity to the strategic Carpathian Mountains. Fast forward to the start of the Second World War, and Russia's signing of a non-aggression treaty with Nazi Germany would give Stalin the breathing room he needed to seize control of Bessarabia. In 1940, Soviet troops crossed the Dniester and swiftly evicted Romanian forces from the region. By melding Bessarabia with a sliver of land from the west of the former MASSR and partitioning this region into Ukraine, they reorganized this land into the new Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic, or MSSR. Also, great acronyms, guys. This region continued to exist as the MSSR until the 1980s, when it too was touched by changes that were sweeping the Soviet Union. President Mikhail Gorbachev was enacting a number of policies aimed at liberalizing the Union and opening it up to free speech, the most notable of which was known as Glasnost. This led to increasing nationalist movements across the USSR. In 1989, the devolved government of the MSSR declared their national language as Moldovan, which is essentially identical to Romanian. These declarations made ethnic Russians and Ukrainians who predominantly lived within Transnistria exceptionally nervous that soon they may be subsumed as a small minority group into a greater Romania that they had never historically been a part of. The decision over the language was largely symbolic, as at the time Romania was ruled by the mad tyrant Nicolae Ceausescu. Then, on Christmas Day that same year, Ceausescu was overthrown in a revolution and executed live on TV. In its aftermath, Romania underwent drastic democratic reforms and began to loosen their border with Moldova. In return, Moldova started to shed its Soviet identity and even adopted the Romanian flag. In response to this, in 1990, Transnistria unilaterally declared themselves as the independent Pridnestrovian Moldovan SSR. Gorbachev rejected this claim, but this didn't deter the Transnistrians from seeking independence, and a number of skirmishes broke out along the border with the greater MSSR. In August 1991, the unstoppable chain reaction began of former Soviet states breaking away from the USSR and declaring their own nations. On the 27th of that month, Moldova joined their ranks, declaring independence for their whole territory including that of Transnistria. This was the spark that would ignite the Transnistrian War, and in 1992 full-scale fighting broke out along the border with the newly formed Moldova. Still stationed in the region from the former days of the USSR, the newly independent Russian forces sided with the Transnistrians and helped push back the Moldovan forces. In July of that year, a ceasefire was agreed which allowed Russia to leave a peacekeeping force of 1,000 to 2,000 soldiers in the region and would freeze the borders where they remain to this day. So that takes us up to the modern day, and why Transnistria has remained this small island of Russian identity within Eastern Europe. So why is it that Putin wants this place? Well, there are two main reasons. For one, it would give him a new front on which to attack Ukraine and allow him to utilise the Russian peacekeeping force that he has established there. In fact, very early on in the war, Belarusian president and Russian ally Alexander Lukashenko was seen in a leaked video with a map indicating a planned attack from Transnistria, which, you know, nice one, idiot. Although I wouldn't expect anything less from the guy that said that COVID isn't there because he can't see it. The other reason is that it would satisfy Putin's obsession with neo-colonialism and the expansion of the Russian state. In my last video, we took a deep dive into Putin as a man and what it is that motivates him to commit these atrocities, so I'll just give you the TLDR and link it down below if you want to go check that out. Putin was born into the Soviet Union, one of the world's two great superpowers. In his late 30s though, this broke apart into 15 separate nations, forever in Putin's eyes downgrading Russia's place in the world. His life's work has been to undo, as he puts it, the greatest tragedy of the 20th century through the expansion and re-establishment of former Soviet territory. Establishing a land corridor to Transnistria would provide an easy expansion of the Russian land into a region where the population would offer up little resistance. So do I think that this is going to happen? Well, for a number of reasons, hopefully not. For one, the war has not exactly been going in Putin's favour, and hopefully if that trend continues then he simply won't get the opportunity to do this. Plus, if Putin was to try and capture this connecting territory, he would first have to capture Odessa, Ukraine's third largest city. A battle here would be bloody and result in numerous casualties on both sides. Casualties which likely Putin doesn't have the manpower for. The other thing is, and I don't exaggerate when I say this, but deploying troops in Transnistria could potentially escalate the conflict into a global war. This is because although the reality on the ground is that Transnistria is autonomous, Moldova considers it to be theirs, and any move to annex it by Russia would be considered an act of war. The core principle of NATO is that an attack on one is an attack on all. While Moldova isn't a NATO member, it's exceptionally closely aligned to Romania, who are. Romania would very likely be drawn into any conflict with Moldova by coming to their defence. A NATO state coming into direct conflict with Russian forces would have severe risk for catastrophic miscalculation. Although deadly miscalculations are kind of Putin's thing, so honestly, who knows what he's going to do next. Personally, I can only hope for a swift end to Putin's brutal occupation of Ukraine in its entirety. And if you want to do something to help the Ukrainian people, then I'll link to some charities down below that you can support. Thank you for watching my video. You know, one other fascinating aspect of this conflict that I read up on but wasn't able to work into this story is how Google Maps is skirting the borders issue by choosing instead to show differing borders for Crimea depending on which country you view it from. If you want to know more about two other conflicts that Google Maps are doing this for, then you might want to check out my other video here.